I'm not new to having a relationship with NCCE. Before, whenever I was in Omaha Public Schools for about 5 years, we brought in NCCE to assist us in our program there at Omaha Public Schools. The story that I'm going to tell you today, and I have some questions actually out there inserted into this presentation that I want you all to think about and even answer in those comments, kind of help assist in thinking differently. Because I think whenever, as a district, whenever you're thinking about professional development and creating lifelong learners, we've got to change how we learn and also make sure that that happens for our students. So I love this slide. I read this book called Create the Future. I totally encourage everyone to read that. It's a great book. Jeremy Geisch is the author of that book, and he talks about a culture of innovation. And urgency is something that we had to really address this last spring. We were in spring break. We come out of spring break and, basically everything shut down. We had a week in Wichita Public Schools to create, a professional development plan for our staff and understand what it looks like for the delivery of content for the rest of that fourth quarter semester. And so whenever now that we've had summertime and we've been planning, there's just tons of things that are happening that's shifted. And I know for us, the delivery of digital equity and access have become a prime target of that. And so whenever you think about, we were going to, as a district, take about a year and a half. The district didn't have a plan before for device rotation. And so whenever you look at digital equity and access, at the time, that plan was going to occur over the course of about a year and a half. And now, since we've had this pandemic, we've changed that to about 3 months. And so we just got through doing some devices. We purchased 24,000 HP devices that have LTE built into them. We're going to provide that internet access to our students to remove some of those barriers that we had in the spring that we identified. And so that, of course, changes how we think about learning. And so that normal is changing for us. And I want you in the chat on the side to talk about what is that new normal for you in your environment, in your school, in your day-to-day. What is our new normal in education? I want you to take a couple moments and type out some of those references there. And I'll continue to go, but I want us to think about, as a community, what does our new normal look like? Because I don't think it's going to go back to the way it was. And I would say there's some information here that would say why. So whenever you think about where students came into technology, it's much different than how we grew up. We're so much digital immigrants into this. I was born in 1976. I really wasn't engaged with Al Gore whenever he created the internet. For those of you who don't know, he claims that he created the internet back in the 90s. And so whenever you look at how technology and particularly how social media has affected our students over the course of time, you look at, and this has actually been updated for this next year, you look at our kindergarten kids, they're coming into kindergarten having the ability to have 5G, which is an insane amount of access and the abilities of access. And so something like that, and access-wise, hasn't happened since really 2009, 2010. So something huge happened. So you think about YouTube came in 2005. In 2009, 2010, something happened, and it was actually not the iPad. It was really LTE. 4G connectivity came out, and before that, you had to have Wi-Fi. You had to have some type of wired connection in order to consume a YouTube video, or video particularly, on any kind of smart device. And so whenever you think about access, at that point in time, that was huge because people could consume an immense amount of content in real time anywhere. And so everything jumped at that time. and all of our access did at that time as well. And so our kids have been exposed to that ever since they were born. And so you think about how the record industry has changed because how we've made, we just don't have record stores anymore. And so many different things have changed. In our transformation here in Wichita Public Schools, I have up here the awareness, skill development, implementation, institutionalization. This is actually the ASCD framework for the depth of knowledge. And so when you think about that transformation model of the delivery of content, getting awareness, skill development, if I were to apply that to blended learning, as I do just right here and now, my instructional technology staff can get us to awareness and skill development. And we're developing our virtual schools to get our folks to that institutionalization key to where their depth of knowledge in that area, let's say it's a virtual school teacher around algebra, that algebra teacher in that virtual school becomes a subject matter expert in blended learning to teach those kids and to teach those teachers how much of that content at what interval and what that looks like. And so you see the MIE program there, you see 21 CLD. All those things are important whenever you think about getting teachers to a level of comfort and a depth of knowledge in order to do that. And so that's a part of our transformation model here. Whenever you think about computing in general, and this goes to my next question that I want you to type in the area, is when you think about those 4 generations of workers that we have in our workplace, and Jeff and I talked about this a little bit, how we're actually getting ready to insert a 5th generation into that. Before, when you thought about modern computing, or you thought about computing in general, it was a laptop and a desktop. You had a desktop in your office and in your classroom, and it took up, probably a quarter of the space with your desk and your printer. And by the way, we've expanded the teacher area because of just the number of devices that are in a teacher's desk area. And so as you've expanded that, you've made less area for students. Now that we're getting to a more modern age, and you see modern computing devices such as the Surface Pro, in which we're delivering Surface Pro 7s to all of our teachers this week. I think we just finished doing about half of our 2,500 elementary teachers. We'll do the rest of them in August. We have all of our high school teachers we're delivering Surface Pro 7s to now too. And you look at how the age of the smartphone has become our primary device, in which that laptop was before for our mobile, as generations have expanded. Now modern computing devices such as the Surface Pro is becoming that primary computing device. In fact, today I'm doing this presentation via a Surface, and it does everything for me. I do all my podcasts, I do my video editing, all those things can happen on that device. I don't need something else to be that higher level computing device. And so what era of computing are we in? What would you label that? If you had to label the era that we're in computing, what would that be? I want you to type that in the area. When you look at professional development, and this is kind of the plan that I had in Omaha, and it's also the plan that I'm implementing here in Wichita, and you look at how pathways of professional development are developed, I'm appreciative of NCCE because as we built what we needed, NCCE was really huge in that partnership and making sure that could happen. In a large district, we have nearly 9,000 staff. The ability for 7 to 8 people to be able to provide all of that is really, it's not, you can't have that type of expectation to do that in a short time. And so how do you do that effectively is through partnerships with Microsoft and through partnerships with NCCE. We also have a partnership with Common Sense Media. And so whenever you think about digital literacy, we've created a sub-department now underneath our IST, our technology group, called Digital Literacy. We're bringing on one of my favorite people, Diane Smokorowski. She's amazing. She helped create the Skype Master Teacher program. And so she's coming on board to be our digital literacy coordinator here at Wichita Public Schools. Our plan is to get all of our schools Common Sense Media certified so that we can show the depth needed for digital literacy. Now, Where does NCCE come into that? Whenever I look at how we provide, going back to that ASCD model, whenever I need to be the building blocks as we continue to deliver digital literacy, and you're looking at these focuses of functional area, creative thinking, cultural and social understanding, collaboration, all those things need to happen within our tools. And NCCE, Tammy Dunbar, Charity, Darren, all those folks have provided some level of depth of ability to get us down the road faster than we could have by ourselves. Plus, it gives a great sense of another set of eyes and another set of thoughts as to how both the industry and we could make things better for students. And so, through our MIE program, which we'll institute this fall, and thinking about how we create some purpose, because when you look at this graphic, it's really about purpose. I'm trying to provide the right resources and building that collaboration inside of teams, and also the device and device equity to professional development and being able to provide a great environment for our students. And we're doing that really from a teacher level around Surface Pro. So Surface Pro 7, it gives a different level of experience for a user. I can digital ink, I can wirelessly display. I have the ability to now walk around the room and facilitate learning rather than just standing at that board. And having that ability within a classroom and having classroom management is incredible. It's so needed within our classrooms. Now, I'll throw a wrench into this. Whenever you think about how we had to deal with COVID, professional development had to become rapid, fast, and it had to be virtual. And so we created a SharePoint site. I would encourage you to talk to your technology leaders. If you use Office 365, go out there and grab the Learning Pathways SharePoint, and it updates all the time to where it has, I'd say, snackable professional development opportunities. And what we built out of that was kind of a landing space for our staff to go to if they needed something quick around all the Office 365 products. It gave them a landing page to go to kind of get that on their own. Because I feel like there's different levels of professional development. There's really kind of your self-improvement professional development, there's school-based professional development, and then there's district-level professional development. And really this kind of hits around that self-improvement area. Now for us, we created that remote learning site so that we could really deploy teams effectively, because I've only been at Wichita Public Schools for, well, not even a year. It'll be a year, August 1. But we had some incredible work that had to be done over that 2-month period after spring break. And so brought in NCCE, we talked about how we could deliver, and we did a lot of that through Teams meetings and through live Teams meetings. We had literally thousands of people, about 10,000 participants on average a week, going through these professional development opportunities. And I have some of those opportunities up here: assigning and grading work in class teams, empowering student engagement with Flipgrid, accessibility in teams. I tell you, I love the accessibility part of teams that is coming out in the fall, whether that be captions, whether that be the focus together. And, having been on the TAP program and being able to give some insight into some of those things have been great. I'm super excited about, it is true, Microsoft is a different animal than it was, I would say, 7 years ago. Whenever I entered Omaha Public Schools, and I want to say about in 2017, we started, actually late 2016, we actually started working on Microsoft Teams. Omaha Public School actually had worked on Microsoft Classroom, which was called Homeroom. I don't know if you guys remember Microsoft Classroom. We worked on that at Omaha Public Schools with Microsoft and developed at first it came out with codename Homeroom, and so it's very much classroom management. But you look at where it's come today inside of Teams, it's very much about conversations. It's very much about building relationships. All the things that we're doing today in a setting for remote learning really stems around relationships. And Teams does a great job of that because it facilitates better conversations. And so whenever I think about that and I think about NCCE and how they help us in that remote learning, and I have Darren Klee and Anthony Newbold in this slide, they did a great job of providing our principals the wherewithal and the knowledge to be able to deliver a remote learning community within teams. And so if I had to give, I'll just say this. Usually I have this discussion with administrators and I'd say, one of the most important people in a school is that principal. And we've got to give some great professional development to our principals to be strong leaders and to model for you teachers and to be able to do those processes differently than what they were before. And I appreciate NCCE helping us out with that. Also say, just watching the live event usage in our Teams area was amazing. The amount of people that we were able to do in a short amount of time was amazing. I mean, I can't imagine having done that differently before. And, the last thing that I would talk about is providing digital parenting and citizenship. I think, it's so important to think about digital parenting as we go into the fall. And as we work with NCCE as a partnership, it's really kind of been every quarter I work with them to kind of build out hey Shannon, what does this look like? Here's what I'm thinking. Can you help me in this area? And digital parenting will be one of those, I know, coming into the fall. Understanding how we build that relationship with our parents as we're building those relationships with our students inside of teams and focusing on providing opportunities to our students. How do we do that also with our parents and engage them more in that setting? And I think having partnerships and doing that well in a remote learning environment is probably critical to the success of how we do things in the year, because our COVID cases are increasing in the United States. You look at where things are going. I think it's important to be agile, and how you're agile in an environment where you don't have access to those resources face-to-face, and you have to think about those things differently. Having a partnership like NCCE is so critical in order to make sure that you can produce depth of knowledge, the mass level of professional development opportunities to meet the gaps that are created based upon the number of generations of people that have entered the workforce and maybe not have had that digital literacy level increased over the course of the time of them, becoming an educator and learning over that time. I think it's really a great time in education, because I think we're just now understanding the needs of our educators to be lifelong learners, to learn more frequently, and to adjust more frequently. Adaptability and agile are two words that I would say are pretty critical for the success of this next school year.
You've been listening to the TEACHERCAST Educational Network, hosted by Jeff Bradbury. Please reach out to the show with all of your questions on Twitter @TEACHERCAST or online at www.teachercast.net. Be sure to subscribe to our podcast so you don't miss any future episodes. And please take a moment to write a review in the App Store.